There's few better feelings for a diver than finding a ship's bell. It's even better when that bell was from a famous ship. A Q ship from the First World War, known as mystery ships. And this one was a subject for years of efforts to try and find it and identify it, and those that were then recorded in a major documentary series on the TV. And the reason is because the Stockforce is such an interesting ship. Q ships in themselves are absolutely fascinating, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that later on. But the Stockforce was particularly special. So to start with, the captain won the Victoria Cross on the day that the Stockforce was sunk. They also claimed to have sunk the submarine that attacked them. In reality, they didn't, so I'm going to talk a bit more about that one later on as well. Also, after the war, the captain and crew of the Stockforce were involved in the making of a silent film about their vessel, which is another incredible aspect of the Stockforce story. And I'm going to be using excerpts from the film throughout this video. The Stockforce is really close to Plymouth, so I've had the pleasure of diving it quite a few times, but the video you're going to see today comes from my most recent dive. So this is my buddy Andy. The more observant of you will notice that he's diving a Liberty in side mount configuration, and there I am, all ready to get in. And I've got some new stuff ready for this dive as well. Two things. First thing is I've got a better video rig. So I've actually got a tray with a GoPro on it rather than just relying on my Paralenz on my helmet. And I've also got that Orcatorch DC710 on my right hand kind of with a sort of soft Goodman handle. I'm going to be talking a bit about both of those things through the dive. Anyway, that's me in the water. You're having a bit of a problem. One of my bailout cylinders is free flowing there. I've just turned it off, or I think I'm just in the process of turning it off, but there's loads of bubbles. It is one of those things that happens, and I guess there's arguments for going in the water with your cylinders turned off and then turning them on once you're in, which would obviously negate this. I've done that before. I just have a tendency to forget to turn them on, so therefore I do like to get in the water with my cylinders on. If you forget to turn them off, then obviously you are going to end up with flooded first stages if you've done a dive of this kind of depth. So I just accept that sometimes I get a slight free flow when I get in the water. Oh, there you go. You can see on my right hand there, you can see that Goodman handle with the Orcatorch DC710. You'll see me using that during the dive, and I'm going to be talking a bit about it. It's a really nice bit of kit, but anyway, more of that later on. You can see there underneath me, Andy hasn't messed around. He's got himself straight down and he's heading for the bottom. The great news is that there's no current. You can see that the shot line is basically vertical, and you can see that we're not having any problems staying close to it. If you have a look below us there, you can see there's two divers, and those two guys are the ones who are putting the lazy shot in. So we've actually followed them in pretty quickly. There you go, just confirmed with Andy that we're both well. Had a quick look at his gear, no bubbles coming off him. So we're in the descent now. You can see that I've got my GoPro on the tray. I've got two video lights there. You can see I'm just sorting it out. And this is one of the things that I'm hoping to do by using this, is to get some better quality video. I'm well aware that some of my video, particularly the helmet mounted stuff, which doesn't have any video lights, you end up with some really kind of poor quality video sometimes, unless I've got the scooter with the video lights. So dives that I don't have a scooter on these days, I'm going to be using this mount, this rig here. So hopefully you'll all enjoy the benefits of that. And on that particular point, you can see that I've switched from my Paralenz to my GoPro. Does mean you lose the temperature and the depth that's normally in the bottom right hand corner. That's a kind of feature that's provided with the Paralenz. On the plus side, I think we're going to get better quality video as a result. So certainly that's what I'm trying to achieve anyway. Now looking at these two guys here, you can see they're actually making a fairly hard work of getting the Prusik on and getting the lazy shot on. But, you know, hey, good skills to them. One of the unusual things you don't see too often with our group is they're both diving inspirations. The diver on the left has got it in a G-box. The guy on the right has got it in the very standard AP yellow box. Relatively unusual to see that, so that's why it's worthy of comment. The other thing you can see is all the tags and stuff on the end of the lazy shot. The other thing, the kind of bag that's flapping around there, that's got my DiveVolk Seatouch housing for my mobile phone in it. And my actual mobile phone, i.e. the one that I use on a daily basis, is in that bag in the housing. You can see here we're probably 25 meters or something like that. And you're going to see a whole load more of that later on when I show you at the end of the video, because those things are absolutely amazing. I use mine now instead of the Kindle. I put a video on there, and I watch the video on deco stops. Anyway, this is me coming up. You can see there's my tag in front of me. It's a really nice bit of thing that the Sump UK guys have made for me. You see they've obviously laser cut my name out on it, so that's really nice. Anyway, we're carrying on going down, and I'm actually really pleased about this because it means I'm able to video something during the descent. Quite often it's just a case of looking in green water or blue water or whatever, so at least here we can see some divers. One of the things I'd just like to point out is those yellow fins are just absolutely awesome, as in fact are the yellow boxes. As you can see, we're not at the bottom yet, but it is pretty dark. Anything that is light coloured like that just stands out really well and is really actually helpful for diving in these kind of conditions. Obviously black looks cool as you like on the surface, but in reality brightly coloured things make a lot of sense when you're underwater in these kind of conditions. And you'll all be aware of my famous yellow gloves, and you see the diver on the left there, he's got kind of a slight take on that. You can see they're kind of, I don't know what you'd call those, eggshell or whatever, but some sort of light blue. You also see that I've turned on the video lights now, and what that's really brought into focus is the snot that's in the water. You can see this is the start of the plankton bloom here. It's all really small stuff, but that will, over the next month or so, that will get bigger and bigger and bigger. The other thing you may be able to hear is a beeping sound, and for those of you who've not had the pleasure of diving with someone on an inspiration before, then this is a treat that you're absolutely missing out. One of the fantastic things about the AP is that there are multiple ways of attracting a diver's attention. There is the head-up display, which will flash lights at you. There is the handset, which will tell you when there's something wrong. And then there is the beeping sound, which will draw your attention to the fact there's a problem. Now, lots of people hate that because they say it detracts their attention and all that kind of stuff. What I would say is, if you can hear something beeping, then clearly you need to be doing something about it. Now, in this particular case, it's not me who's making that beeping sound, it's one of those other two divers, and they have got a CO2 warning. It's not telling them to bail out, but it's just telling them that they may be having issues. That alarm is suppressible, and in fact that diver has just suppressed it to say, yes, I acknowledge that my CO2 level in the loop is higher than is ideal, but it hasn't quite got to the point yet where you think I should bail out. So that's what's happened with that diver. Now the CO2 sensor gets an awful lot of stick from different people, and all I'm going to say is I am a huge fan of them. Unfortunately mine died after my loop flood in the bailout scenario. I'm sure many of you will have seen that video, and I haven't got round to getting another one yet, but I will do at some point. Anyway, so I am now getting to the bottom of the shot line, and at the bottom of the shot line I've got to attach my strobes. You can see there's a couple of strobes up there in front of me, which means that I've dropped my GoPro, or the tray with my GoPro on it. So I'm now switching back to the Paralenz. You can see the depth in the bottom right hand corner, you can see the water temperature, and you can see me also starting to mess around getting my strobes off, and I'll be putting my strobes on the shot line. The thing that you can see in my right hand there is the Orcatorch, the DC710 that I'm trialling on this dive, and you can see it's on that little Goodman handle. So you can also see that there's some strobes a bit higher up and there's some strobes a bit lower down, and then you can also see the seabed starting to come into view. So for me this is about the right level to put my strobes on, and that's what I'm going to do. The other thing I'm thinking about at this point is, you can see that the shot is on the edge of the wreck, so I need to decide which way to go. Am I going to go to the left, or am I going to go to the right? And what I want to be doing is heading towards the stern, because I know the stern is the most interesting bit. So, just before I do that, a bit of a selfie there. That's me. There's Andy. You can see he's looking great. He's obviously got orange fins, which also stand out quite well. There's a bit of a lobster there that he's highlighting. And there you can see in front of us is the wreck, and the Stockforce is largely inverted, apart from the stern, which is on its side. So what we're going to do now is try and decide which way to go. And for whatever reason, I don't know why I don't really look to my left, because that would have been a sensible thing to do, because the stern is literally a few meters to the left. But you're going to see that later on. What I'm going to do is I am going to go over the top of the hull, and then we're going to go right, which is going to take us to the bow in due course. But in the interim, I think I've spotted something under there. I'm trying to get it out. And while I'm trying to get it out, obviously I've dropped the GoPro again. Fortunately, it's actually kind of showing what I'm digging away at in there. Whatever it is, it doesn't come out. It's not very interesting. So the good news is I'm going to leave it and get on with the dive. Now, this bit of the dive is not going to be particularly interesting. So it's a great opportunity for me to tell you about Q-ships, if you don't already know. And also to tell you about a gentleman called Lt Harold Auten, who was the skipper. So we'll start off with Q-ships. Now, at the beginning of the First World War, German submarines didn't often use torpedoes to sink ships. Most of the time what they would do is they would surface, they would come alongside a vessel, and what they would do is either tell the crew to get off, and then they would go on board it and they would put explosives on board and they would blow the bottom of the ship out, or they would use the gun or guns that were mounted on the submarine to shell the vessel and sink it that way. Now that was obviously a great thing for the Germans to do, because torpedoes were expensive and unreliable, but obviously they carried lots of explosives and they had lots of shells for the guns, so it made a load of sense. If you've seen my Hans Jensen video, the Hans Jensen was a ship that was sunk in 1916 exactly by the method that I've described. Guys went on board, put explosives on board, and sunk it that way. So obviously we weren't very keen on this idea, so in order to stop this, what we did was we came up with two things. The first thing was we put guns on the back of standard merchant vessels and encouraged the merchant vessels to use their guns by putting members of the armed forces on board to operate the guns. Now these were known as defensively armed ships. The guns weren't hidden, they were visible, and therefore the view was they would probably deter a submarine from trying to get too close, or from perhaps even using its own gun. The Germans responded to that by putting bigger guns on submarines and more guns on submarines, but that's the way it is with these kind of things. There's always an arms race. So the other thing that we did was we came up with this idea of Q-ships. Now Q-ships were ships that didn't look as though they were armed. So they were disguised, they had hidden guns on board them, and what they would therefore do is they would wait until a submarine got close. When the submarine got close enough, they would run up the flag, and you've already seen that in the extract from the video that I showed you earlier on. They would run up the flag, they would drop the things that hid the gun, and once again you've seen that already in the video, and they would then start engaging the submarine. Hopefully they would catch the submarine off guard enough that they would be able to sink it. Perhaps not surprisingly, the Germans became aware of this, and therefore, particularly towards the end of the war, became very, very wary of ships that they considered suspicious. So that's why the Q-ships went to extraordinary lengths to disguise themselves. All the crew would wear civilian uniform, they would remove any markings, they would be very secretive when they were in ports, because there was a big concern over spies and all that kind of stuff. And they would adopt sailors' mannerisms as they saw them when they were at sea. So it was a really interesting kind of thing. Now the other things that the Germans did, of course, is if they thought a ship was suspicious, they would spend a lot of time looking at it before they actually got close enough to it. And particularly towards the end of the war, they didn't mess around either with trying to come close to things. They would just put torpedoes into them and then wait and see what happened. As you can see, here are two divers. These are the first pair of divers on the wreck, so they are heading back towards the shot line. And if you have a look at the diver to the left, you may recognise Andy by his yellow gloves, which are very similar to mine. Now, really interesting today, Andy is diving on his new rebreather. He's just bought himself a lungfish, so that's the first time I've seen one on a boat. He's really, really pleased with it, and it does look quite smart. He's moved from an inspiration, moving on to the lungfish, and this is him kind of gradually working up his depth and getting used to it. So there was actually two of those on the boat today, along with the Liberty side mount that you've already seen. So it's really interesting to see how kind of diving is evolving and different units are increasingly being seen. Now, what's happening here is I have reached the front of the wreck, and this is actually the bow. So I am swimming. There's a very small bit of the bow that you can swim inside. So I'm doing that. I'm going in. It's an overhead environment. It is covered above me, but it's actually only a really small bit. Effectively, you go around sort of 180 degrees, and it brings you out again. So you'll see that in a minute. It's just nice to go in and have a look. You never know. You get all sorts of interesting things in the bow of ships, and perhaps I'll see something this time. I've been in here several times previously, and I've never really seen anything. But hey, there we go. Oh, and look, here's something. I don't know if you can see it there, just hiding under that bit of plate, but that is a big old lobster. And you can see he's been in that skin for quite a long time. So I guess he's probably getting ready to get rid of it and maybe move into another one. But he's also pretty wary of divers, you can see there, trying to get in as far as possible away from me. Although I don't think he's doing a particularly good job. If I wanted to, I could grab it there, but I'm going to leave him be. That's a big old chap. Now, big lobsters, not as tasty as smaller ones. I'll be honest, I can't really tell the difference, but I'm inside a wreck. Last thing I want to be doing is fighting with a lobster as well. And you probably just saw off to the right hand side that Andy's coming in behind me as well. I have, it would appear, seen something else. So I'm trying to get it out. Or I'm trying to do something with it, but clearly not with much joy. There's also, in fact, there's a lobster skin over there of some sort. So another lobster has, I don't know, do they call it molting when lobsters change skin? But there's some big old edible crabs as well. There's one down there, and there's another one off to the right hand side. I'm always a bit wary of those things as well. If you want to pick one up, then obviously the place to do it is on their back legs. I've been I've been grabbed by one much smaller than those two before on my little finger, and I swore it broke my finger. Oh, there you go, that's what I'm doing. I'm having a bit of a selfie. So that's me inside a wreck, inside the Stock Force, having a quick look at myself. So, and what you also probably saw is underneath there, where the right hand of the two edible crabs was actually the anchor chain. There was a big pile of chain all rusted together. Also just gone past a crawfish. So, and as you probably know, where there's one crawfish, there's a whole load more crawfish. And I'm now coming out of the wreck. And this is a really important bit. So I'm coming out of the bit that I swam into. Somebody's ditched a plastic bucket there, probably because there was a hole in the left-hand side. Now, a few years ago, I just got to this point when I heard a whole load of squealing, really high-pitched. And I was like, what on earth is that? And off to my side, as I'm looking at it now, off to the left-hand side, that was where Fran was. And it's when I went over there, Fran, that's where she found the bell. I'm going to come back to that story in a minute, because we just want to see Andy here. He is exiting the wreck, and as you probably see, he's having a little bit of a problem there. One of his bailout cylinders, he's got two on the right hand side. You can see the reg on that green hose is somehow been caught, and that was what was restricting him getting out. So I'm going to tell him in a minute that he needs to sort that out. But clearly it is always a potential problem, getting stuff snagged, and another good reason why it's worth diving as a pair, so you can help each other out. So yeah, going back to the bell story, it was, as I'm looking here, it was, I don't know, 5 meters out that way, off the side of the wreck. That's where the bell was, mainly buried in the seabed, as you can see from this photo that I took on the day. And you have to say, for Fran to spot that and realise what it was, that was a really impressive thing to do. Loads of people had dived this wreck when they were trying to decide whether it was a Stock Force or not. They spent an awful long time on it, and all of them had missed that bell. So really interesting and quite cool for us, because lots of the people who dived it and did all the work to identify it, we were able to kind of tell them, look, we found the bell. And obviously they were they were really pleased that the bell had been found, but they were also a bit annoyed with themselves that none of them had managed to spot it. So you can see I've told Andy about his hose, and you can see there he is busy putting it away. He's unclipped that cylinder, brought it forward, he's tucking the hose away, and then he'll clip it back on his left-hand side. So he's all sorted, which is good news. Now, the thing with the bell is there's another interesting thing about the bell, and it had no name on it when it came up, and that was obviously really sad. But several years ago, so after we'd recovered the bell, this thing came up for auction. And you can see that's a bell. It says Stockforce. It's got the clanger. Looks as though it's a reasonable age. So begs the question, what's going on there? We all know that no other bell has been found on the Stockforce. So how can this have happened? And the only thing we can theorise is that it doesn't appear that that bell has ever been underwater. The clanger is iron, so if it had been underwater for any amount of time, the clanger would have rotted and wouldn't be there anymore. So bells normally come up without clangers. So the working assumption is that as part of the process of turning it into a Q ship, the bell with the name Stockforce was removed off it, and it was replaced with a bell without a name, and that was part of what went on with, I guess, disguising it or concealing it. The simple truth, unfortunately, is we will never know. But anyway, somebody else bought that bell. Obviously, loads and loads of us would have wanted it because obviously of the important name. But somebody else bought it, and I'd love to know where it is. I'd love to know who's got it, and to be honest, I'd love to see it as well. So going back to Q ships, one of the things that they did was they filled them full of all sorts of things to improve their buoyancy. So there would be loads of wood aboard and things like that, so that if the Germans did hit them with a torpedo, the ship wouldn't sink. Obviously, having fired one torpedo and not having sunk the vessel, the Germans would then want to try and do something to sink it. So often that would encourage them to come in close and maybe use their gun, for instance. So to encourage the Germans to do that, the Q ships had these things called panic parties. And a panic party was meant to suggest to the Germans that all the crew had abandoned ship. So it'd be a group of people who were nominated to get in a rowing boat or a lifeboat or whatever and row away from the ship. And once again, you can see that in the film Q Ships from 1928. So these were the real people. Some of these had actually been on board the Stockforce, so they were demonstrating the tactics and everything that they used for real. And this is what happened with the Stockforce. So it got hit by a torpedo in the bow. The bow was heavily underwater. The forward gun was knocked out. In fact, a crewman was trapped underneath it and had to remain there all the way through the battle. Incredible bravery, because supposedly there was water lapping up around him. So the panic party, they bailed out. They got into the boat. They rowed away, and the rest of the crew just remained hidden until the submarine got close enough for them to drop the sides and then start engaging in battle with it. And you can imagine you must have had nerves of steel to do that, to remain hidden while your ship was effectively sinking, while the submarine was getting closer and closer, and you're just waiting for that moment when you're going to fire and when you're going to drop the sides and start firing. Absolutely incredible times, incredible people. And no doubt that's why the skipper, Harold Auten, won the Victoria Cross. Clearly he was very brave, but so were all the other members of crew who were on board with him. But he, I guess, was the leader, so he was the person who got the gallantry medal. But I'm sure the rest of them felt that they'd all earned it for certain. So this is me on the wreck. I'm getting close to the stern now. You probably saw that bit of blue pipe back there. Wasn't particularly exciting. It was a bit of rubbish. But this is exciting, because this is, as you can see, the muzzle of a gun. The Stockforce carried two 4-inch, so 100mm guns. This is one of them. Also carried two 12-pounders, quick-firing guns. So, unfortunately, only one of the 4-inch guns is visible. The other one, I assume, is buried under the wreck. Oh, you can just see up here. You can see there is some dials. And possibly a sight under there as well. That would have been used, obviously, to lay the gun to make sure it hit. There is the breech. You can see they're buried under that bit of rope and all the recuperators and all that kind of bits and pieces. So absolutely incredible to see. And there's the mount up there as well. To see the gun that would have fired on UB-80, which is the submarine that sunk the Stockforce. To think that this would have probably been firing during that battle. Just absolutely amazing to be able to kind of touch and feel such an important piece of history. Now, what there is also around here, because I've seen it before, is one of the 12-pounder guns. One of the 12-pounder guns was mounted forward of the bridge, the other one was mounted rear of the bridge, and the two 4-inch guns were mounted at the stern, which is also where the engine and the boiler of the Stockforce is located. So that's where I am now. It's where the majority of the machinery and where most of the interesting bits of the wreck are, and this is where I meant to come first. So it's taken me ages to get here, and I apologise for that, but I'm here now, and it's the most interesting bit of the wreck. So I'm going to spend the rest of the dive in and around the stern talking you through what there is. And as you can see here, I've gone past the gun, and this is me underneath the hull, and in a minute I'm going to look up and you are going to see the prop up there. And the reason is that the wreck, at this part of it, is not fully inverted. This bit of the wreck is on the starboard side, so it's really helpful because obviously you can effectively look inside it. We're going to go up and have a look at the prop in a minute. So if you can imagine now, the curved bit of the hull is just up above me to my left hand side there. I am going to go up there in a minute. You're going to see the prop, and I'm going to show you the rudder later on. But in fact, there you go. That's the prop there. So you kind of see what I mean. How the wreck is lying on its starboard side. And then I'm just going in here, and you can probably see those sticks sticking out there. And and there's a whole load of boxes as well. So these are ammunition boxes. That is cordite coming out of shell cases, and there's a whole load more boxes in there with shell cases in there. And I think this is ammunition for the 12-pound gun, or 12-pound guns rather, instead of the 4-inch ones. 4-inch shells I've seen before on other wrecks are much bigger. So returning to the story of the Stockforce and what happened to it. So it obviously got torpedoed, the panic party got off, and the submarine, which was UB-80, so a Type 3 UB class submarine. UBs were kind of smaller inshore ones, mainly operated out of Flanders in Belgium. It came in close, and they waited. Obviously the bow was down, and then when the submarine got close enough, they gave it everything they had on board, and their belief was that they had done enough damage to it so that the submarine had sunk, and therefore they destroyed it. In fact, there's some great sketches done by the skipper which show this. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any of them that were good enough resolution to put on the video, so I'm sorry about that. But this gun that we're looking at again, this is one of the guns that would have been manned and would have probably been firing at the submarine. So it's an incredible story. The submarine was firing back and did enough damage to the Stockforce, so despite all the best efforts of the crew, several hours later it actually sunk in the position obviously where it is now. The submarine, on the other hand, was nowhere near as badly damaged as the crew thought. It had some damage to the hull and the periscopes were put out of action, but otherwise it was pretty intact, although it did have to go home for repairs. The skipper, interestingly enough, was very famous skipper called Max Veerberg. I may have pronounced that incorrectly. He sunk a whole load of ships during the First World War, was awarded the Pour la Mérite, which is the top German award of the time, and he's also responsible for sinking several other wrecks that I've dived, including, rather interestingly, one called the Apex Axpe, I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce it, Mendi, which was, we found the bell on a few years ago. So I have been present when 2 bells from 2 ships sunk by Max Veerberg were located. He's also responsible for a couple of other ones that I've dived. Anyway, all the participants in the Stockforce v UB-80 action survived it, despite all the weaponry that was being thrown around. As far as I can tell, they all went on to survive the war. UB-80 was scrapped at the end of the war. Everybody was okay, but probably the most interesting person who was involved in this was the skipper of the Stockforce, so Harold Auten, the guy who got the Victoria Cross. After the war, he was clearly interested in making sure that people were aware of what had happened, so he wrote the book Q-Ship Adventures. Seen a bit of that at the beginning, and then he actually moved over to America and became a film producer. And my assumption is that is how he became involved in the making, or that's how come the film Q-Ships got made. My assumption is that there was, publicity surrounding the book, and people wanted to find out more, so they put together this film. And during the film, one of the filming was enabled by using a real submarine, and they actually ended up sinking a real submarine. So the film that you've seen of a submarine getting close to a ship, and was actually, it was a real submarine, not a German one, it was actually a British one, and they filmed. They made the film out near the Eddystone Lighthouse, which is off Plymouth here. And during the filming, they actually sunk the submarine. So the submarine that was used for the filming is out there on the Eddystone Lighthouse. It's in about 60 metres. You can dive it. I have dived it. It's not a great dive, but it is out there. So kind of interesting how these things kind of come together. Now, what is interesting at the moment is you can see there that I'm kind of a bit higher up on the wreck. And this is the prop. You can see that really clearly. You can also see what there is a skeg around it. So a skeg is kind of effectively a bit like a cage, but only a small element of the cage. It comes underneath the prop and stops the prop from banging on the ground. So what we're at now, to the left of me here, is the very bottom of the ship. The prop was a bit above it. This bit that I'm looking at now, sticking off into the distance, this was what the rudder would have been mounted on. And you can see there's a mount that was just to the right hand side for part of the rudder. So obviously the water from the prop goes over the rudder, and that helps with improving the steering. Now the interesting thing is, where is the rudder? Looking at that, the rudder's not in position. So you'd imagine it's actually on the seabed. Now it isn't there. I've been there earlier on in the dive. And what you're going to see now is this is where the rudder is here. There you go. You can see it just in front of me there, with all the lovely anemones on and everything. So it's a really odd place for the rudder to be. How come it ended up there, which is kind of, you wouldn't imagine that to go from where it was mounted to here, it would have kind of almost had to fall up and over the prop. Now clearly that's not something that actually is going to happen. So the only thing I can conclude is that the prop ended up in this position perhaps as a result of the battle. Maybe something hit it and therefore it got blown out of position. It ended up on the wrong side of the prop, or it ended up here as part of the result of the sinking. You can see there's a massive bend in it. So that's the top mount of the rudder. We've just gone past it. You can see there's the curve of it. So at some point there's massive force applied to this to get the rudder from where it should be to where it is here. So really kind of minor thing, but it's the kind of thing that I find really interesting. What are the mechanics that are involved in this? How does stuff happen? How do the ships end up in the state that they are now? So anyway, I'm now going back over a bit of the hull, and I'm going to be going more back into the wreck. So the thing that you're probably going to see quite shortly is down to my left hand side is the drive shaft that's coming from the prop, and we'll be going into the engine, and the engine is just in front of me, although it's kind of fallen out a bit. We're going to see the boiler in a minute, which also has fallen off its mountings as well. So they're in front of us there. You can see that is the prop shaft coming from the left hand side, going through whatever that is, some sort of bearing or something like that. In fact, there you go. That is, just had a look there at where the prop shaft goes out of the vessel. And therefore, all this stuff to the right hand side here is the engine. Now the engine's really important for the Stock Force because it is how the Stock Force was identified. So when they dived it in about 2010, 2011, what they did was they brought down a load of tape measures, and they measured things like the cylinder head on top of the engine. Each engine at this time was unique, and the size of the cylinders was recorded in the Lloyd's register, so they knew how big they should be. They measured the cylinder heads, and therefore they were the same as the Lloyd's register, so they knew that this was definitely the Stock Force, because there's no other identifying features on it. Obviously things like the gun, or the guns, and the fact it's rear-engined, it's got a single boiler, these are all features that help to narrow it down, but none of them in itself is an identifying feature. There's the boiler. Obviously Scotch boiler, and you can see just beyond it there is Andy. Now one thing to kind of clear up actually is there's two Andys mentioned in this video. There's the Andy who's my buddy, and there's and is diving on the side mount Liberty, and there is the other Andy who's got the yellow gloves, who's diving on the lungfish. Rather unhelpfully, they've both got a surname beginning with W as well. So there's Andy W with the yellow gloves, and there's Andy W who's diving the Liberty side mount. So hope that clears things up. Right, back to the wreck. So this is the underneath of the boiler here. So you can see that curved bit off to the left-hand side. That's what the boiler would have sat in. It would have just been held in by gravity. So as the ship is kind of, I guess, more than over on its side, and it's obviously decayed and fallen out, the boiler has kind of rolled out. I don't know what this is on the top of it. It looks really interesting. Anybody has any thoughts? I'd really like to know. It kind of has the feel to me of something that might go bang. So I'm going to leave it where it is. Although that kind of brass cap on the top of it, I think, looked particularly interesting. So hopefully I'm going to turn back and do a bit more video of it. Yeah, there we go. I don't know. I kind of maybe some sort of explosive device, you know, maybe part of a depth charge or something. I don't know. That's just me guessing. That's obviously the front of the boiler there. You can see all the pipes, some of which have got various different beasties living in them, as you would expect. You know, nice homes for them. And it is, as you can see here, it's quite a colourful wreck. I'm actually really pleased with my video setup on this one. I'm getting much better quality video than I normally do. So I hope you are all enjoying that. You probably just saw the light flashing off in the distance. That shows how close this is to the shot line. And you may recall from the beginning of the video that I came down and I went right when obviously I should have gone left, because that would have just brought me straight here. But hey, I know where it is now, and the fact is this is 60 metres, so you get a good long time on the wreck, and I've got plenty of time to see everything. Now, Andy W with the side mount Liberty is just in front of me there, and one of the things that we agreed we'd do on this dive is that he would take some video using the GoPro of the torch that I've got on my right hand. So what I'm going to do in a moment is swap from the GoPro to my Paralenz, and you can see I'm on my Paralenz now. We've got the depth and the temperature in the bottom right hand side. I'm going to hand over the camera and the lights. There you go. That's all to him, and he's therefore going to take a bit of video of me with this lovely little DC710 torch there. You can see I've got it on my right hand with a Goodman handle, and it's actually it's really good of Orcatorch to send me this. Obviously they want to get a bit of publicity for their products, but it's a great opportunity for me to kind of try out some of their different stuff. And you know, I'll be honest, I'm a big fan of Orcatorch anyway, but a few of the things that they've sent me are really nice, and this is a good example. So what I'm doing here is just showing obviously how the button works and you know, the different kind of brightness levels that you get. But one of the things I'd just like you to focus on is just at the sort of back from where my finger is, you can see that the USB-C charging slot is there. Now this torch can be charged without needing to take the battery out, which is quite a nice little facility. Obviously reduces the risk of you catching an O-ring or an O-ring not being sealed or whatever, because you don't need to open it up every now and again. Now somebody on one of my pieces of content I posted somewhere said that they had this torch and they'd had problems because they'd done what I've done here, which is gone diving with the cover removed off the charging thing. Orcatorch, I think, saw that and messaged me and said, look, you know, it shouldn't make any difference. You can dive with the charging thing open. The cover is merely there for people who want to use it. And so what they said to me was, look, why don't you take the torch diving with the cover open so that everybody can see it's absolutely fine. So I was like, yep, okay, challenge accepted. I'm going to do that. And therefore this entire dive, the whole thing, I am diving with the cover on the charging slot open, and I've got the torch in front of me now. So sort of 10 days after this dive, and the torch is still working absolutely fine, still charges fine. So it's all good. Mind you, I did wash it out with fresh water when I got back, which is the recommendation that you need to do. So obviously I'm now at the end of the dive. I am now starting the ascent. You've seen I've just recovered my my twin strobes there. Andy's strobe is there as well, so he's going to come and get that. And we're heading up now. At this point, I make a boo-boo. If you have a look down, you can see there's a light on the seabed. I'm like, oh, that's not good. How did that get down there? And I've just realised Andy handed the GoPro tray back to me with the two video lights on, I didn't clip it on, but then when I was taking off my strobes, I then let go of it, so I dropped it to the seabed. Now this is starting to become a thing. You may have seen me drop an SMB and reel on one of the other dives, and here I am, nearly lost my my video rig there, which would have been very bad. Fortunately, I had only turned one of the video lights off, the other video light was still on, so I spotted it. Andy had spotted it as well, so he was like, "What on earth are you doing, you complete nugget?" But anyway, got it all sorted, and therefore I can start the ascent without any problems whatsoever. At this point, I'm going to slightly accelerate things. I'm going to cut, and I'm going to leap forward a bit. Obviously, ascending from dives, not particularly the most interesting thing. What is going to be really interesting is when I go shallow, you are going to see my new toy, and I love it to bits. I saw it at the dive show in March, and as soon as I saw it, I knew I had to have it. Anyway, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Before we get to the deco, first of all, we've got to sort out the lazy shot. So you can see there, current started to pick up, so the lazy shot's pulling a bit. There's my my lovely tag, which is laser cut with my name on it. Just holding it out there so you can see it. Obviously, I think I probably need to put it the other way around. There we go, look at that. That is it's brilliant. It's a lovely little thing. I'm just petrified I'm going to drop it, which, as you've seen already in this video, I've got a bit of a habit of doing. So that's something to kind of worry about. And now I'm going to release a lazy shot, and there it goes. So I'm going to leap forward again to get, when I get shallow, and you can see this DiveVolk in operation. These DiveVolk housings for foams are just unbelievably good. I'm going to do a full video on it at some point, but so this is just me eulogising about it in advance. I put my actual mobile phone in there, so the one I use every day. I put it in there, I've downloaded some films onto it, and then during my deco, I watch films on there. It is awesome. You can even hear the sound. I have subtitles on it, but you can hear the sound on it. So it's just absolutely brilliant. Unfortunately, that does mean an end to my Kindle for decompression, so I'm not using that anymore. I'm just using the DiveVolk, and it is absolutely brilliant. So, as you can tell, I'm a fan. But back to the dive, deco's done, everything's put away. I am just ascending up to surface. You can see there I was on my delayed S&B at the end of the dive. We often do this if there's a lazy shot with only a single rope and a buoy. Put up the delayed S&B next to it, and it just makes it easier to do your decompression. So, you know, helps with buoyancy and all that sort of stuff. As you can see there, I've made a bit of a Horlex. I haven't put as much gas in there as perhaps I would have liked. But come up, it's a beautiful day. Great day to be alive. Great day to be diving. Great day to be at sea. And, you know, all I need now is the boat. And there it is over there. By the looks of things, maybe picking another diver up or something like that. Anyway, fast forward again, you can see boats coming over. Always a great sight. This is Red Alert, one of the dive boats out of Plymouth. Daniels is a skipper. I've known him for a very long time. We've done loads of diving together. Famously, my first dive on HMS Victory was off this boat, and I think that's about the furthest ashore it's ever been. But anyway, Danny's a great bloke, great skipper, great boat, and that is me about to get on board, which I am very much looking forward to. And that is it for another dive. I hope you've enjoyed this one. If you could do all the usual things, please like, subscribe, give me a comment, tell me what you think about this dive. If you know something interesting about the Stockforce, I would love to hear it. Otherwise, I will see you on the next one.